Construction. Tim Croke is also with Tishman. We're both working on site work and central plant work that's ongoing. I'm going to talk about the site work. So at the last town hall meeting, I had explained what we're at the first phase. We were replacing the Con Ed duct bank and water main on the West Road because the existing utilities run through the foundation of the first academic building. As of mid-January, the Con Ed duct bank had been done from end to end. Con Ed has been working on pulling wires through and splicing the wires, but the final cutover is expected in the next 2 to 3 weeks. The water main, we've installed new valves over here so that our isolation and work on the site doesn't affect the rest of the residents on the island. If we need to do work, we can control it from over here with brand new valves. And the water main is working its way down with expected completion in the next week. The next phase of the road work is the installation of all the new utilities and the widening of the roadway. And it's still a little early to go over the exact logistics of it. We're working on a plan it's phased around the North Road and down the East and the West Road to get utilities to the new buildings for when they need it. That will be available probably for the next meeting in April, I think you said it was. That'll be available for the next meeting in terms of the exact locations and what dates we're going to be working on. But that includes widening the road to 32 feet and the installation of all new utilities: storm, sewer, electric, gas, water. If you want to move forward. Sure. So this is a picture of Ferreira, who is our site contractor, installing the Con Ed duct bank. And if you go one the next slide. So this is precast duct bank. The way Con Ed installs their utilities is they're sections of precast concrete, and that's how they connect between each manhole, and that's with the conduit with which they pull the wire through. So all of that was done by mid-January. And this is Con Ed now. Obviously this is before the snow, but this is how they're pulling the wire through. They got their their real trucks on one side, and they got the tuggers on the other, and they pull from manhole to manhole, and then they splice inside the manhole. 2 separate crews, which they're working on now. You want to take this?
Central utility. The central utility plant is one of the first buildings we'll be putting up. All the power from Con Ed will come into that building and be distributed throughout the campus. That permit was just approved on Friday, so we'll start construction on that, excavating for the utilities. The utilities will come out in from the North Road and then feed out this way throughout the campus into the academic building, the Colo building, Resi building, and the site-wide utilities. So we'll start with excavation, which will take probably about 2 months, and then we'll start with the structure. It's a slab on grade. It's a 1-story building. There's not a whole lot to it, but a lot of important equipment, just electrical distribution equipment inside of it. The building itself is here. It's got a nice metal panel and louvers on this side. Utilities feed out. This is all underground from here through. It's basically like a giant manhole, and all the electrical duct banks and conduit gets pulled through there and distributes out to the campus that way. So that'll start sometime in, the electrical cable pulls will start sometime this summer and be finished up by the fall, so we can backfill and close that area off. Mobilization, we've mobilized, we've got equipment out there. The equipment's been coming over by the barge. Excavation will start. Like I said, we just got the permit, so they're out doing test pits this week, and we'll start the excavation operations probably in full swing on Monday. And the foundation walls will start soon after. We're starting with that vault portion, which is the underground portion. I pointed out at the south portion, at the tip of that triangular building. We'll start with the foundation walls down there, and then come up with the cup foundation walls, which end up all being underground. Like I said, it's a slab on grade. So those will all start sometime next month.
Are there questions about that? I just want to explain one thing, that the reason that we're doing the utilities in the West Roadway is that the electrical service for the hospital and for the southern areas of Roosevelt Island, including the parks and also the DEP station, those were all entangled together previously. It was a fairly unconventional system that you wouldn't find in other parts of the city, including electrical wires that were direct buried cables that were on property that wasn't part of public right-of-way. So part of this project is disentangling that. So the work that's going on the western side, that's electrical service that's not serving the campus. It's bypassing the campus, going through the roadway, going down to serve Con Ed customers at the south end of the island. And so Tishman is doing both projects. The other one is bringing the electricity onto campus. So the lines that we're running on campus that Tim referred to are specifically for the campus itself. There's no interconnection anymore. The campus is connected to the street system, but once it goes onto the campus, it's related only to the campus.
Do you want to do questions
At the end.
Okay, fine.
I think if there's questions about the specific this project,
Whatever
it's
you
probably useful to do it now.
Actually, I had a question about the roadway.
Yep.
Okay, and then I have some questions on that. And you can tell me whether it's something that's coming up later. So, has there been a decision made, and have you worked with DOT in terms of the tree issue that we had at the southern?
There isn't a decision made, but we've worked with DOT. It's not for lack of pushing on this. There was actually a suggestion that was made at the last meeting, I think in October, of leaving the curb where it is and separating out the curb from the sidewalk, right? Pulling the sidewalk in, leaving the curb.
That was Margie's.
I don't know who came up with that idea, but that was a good idea. We didn't come up with it, but we're happy to take it and run. So we did present that to DOT. They were generally favorable towards it. Now it's a legal issue that has to be ruled by 3 separate city entities. And I will tell you that we have 2 out of 3 in our pocket, and I was hoping to have the 3rd one tonight, but we're not 100% there. So I think that's the scenario that we are pursuing at the moment. And as soon as we have confirmation, we'll let you know.
And once you do the utilities in the streets, you will then be developing the roadway to the approved map width. And when will that begin?
The roadway work should start sometime April, May, and it'll continue for at least a year.
And that'll include the bike lanes and things like that?
Yes, right through the finishes.
Okay, so if you...
Sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
Just to clarify too, the roadway will be widened, but the final asphalt coat that you see, that's a smooth coat and the striping, is going to be done generally right before the campus opens to prevent any construction traffic from damaging it. So the road width will be there, but the stripes.
So I assume that when you filed your permits, you listed the address as Main Street?
You know, I saw the permits this morning. It looked like they were all listed as 1 Main Street.
So if you recall, the community board, as part of one of its recommendations was that the east and west loop roads be renamed to East and West Main Street, because nobody knows Loop Road, and it's a continuation of Main Street. And I know this changing of the name is not a big deal, because it's just something that could be done by the council, I believe. And do you know anything about where it is, or maybe
Joe was out there talking to Diane, but
we can find out where that is, because I think it just requires some council legislation. It doesn't even need to go through ULURP or the City Planning Commission.
So to East and West Main Street.
I don't know the answer to that. We should look into it. I know that for Department of Finance purposes, we have divided the lot up into a series of tax lots that each have their own address, but they're almost random in their numbering. So it's
but they are Main Street addresses. I mean, the hospital was Main Street too. So
yeah, the hospital was 1 Main Street.
Right.
So the permit that was pulled, I know for the first academic building, I'm pretty sure I saw the permit today that said 1 Main Street.
Okay. So all the more reason why at some point before you open, that should be called Main Street. Yeah.
Well, what's East, what's West Main Street? I never heard of this. Tell me exactly what you think you're doing.
We're not. I think we've always said that we're agnostic on this. Is that we know the community has certain strong feelings about the street names, and I don't think we share those strong feelings. But I think we're willing to figure out a solution. Anyway, we should take that as a separate conversation and focus on the construction.
That might be.
Yes.
Okay.
Are there other questions about the utilities and the site work and the central utility building?
Go ahead, Lynn, and then I'll come back to the
What
comment.
I wanted to ask is, we realized when there was that bridge truck fire a year or two ago, that our electricity was from the island was coming off of the bridge. Is your electricity part of that electricity that's coming off the bridge?
Yes. Yes, we were
There isn't
affected
any
by that.
plan to kind of get it off the bridge?
In terms of how it gets to the island, we have
Yeah.
no control over that. That's Con Ed. We did switch off of one of the feeders we were using was feeder 51, and we've since switched over to feeder 58. So we've switched off of the feeder that was damaged, but as far as how the feeders or any of the utility gets to the island, we're not.
I'm just concerned because it happened once, that, I mean, God forbid we have another huge fire on the bridge, but then it's gonna take everybody out again.
Well, one thing I can say is in terms of resiliency, the feeders are not next to each other on the bridge, and when that truck fire did happen,
It just sounds a little,
when the truck fire did happen, one leg of one feeder went out, but power wasn't interrupted because every building here gets three feeds.
No, we did have problems with the electricity on the island when that happened. We lost electricity on the island.
Okay.
My building sacrificed it. We pulled ourselves off the grid, okay, which meant we had a power failure because it turns out our access was the easiest to pull the plug because it was right on Main Street. But yes, we had to reduce the load so that the other buildings could not.
Well, we picked the power up at the North Road. So anything north of that, we don't control how it gets there. And as Andrew said, we did separate most of the feeds so that the parks are separated from the campus, so the campus is isolated from everywhere else.
Yeah,
We don't control.
Long term, we're looking at redundancy for a couple of systems, electric, gas, IT. We're not 100% there yet, but I think it's a long-term strategy for the good of the entire island. That's something that we would like to work with you on, and I think we're certainly talking to Con Ed about that for gas at the moment, but we have not, that hasn't been part of the electric conversation yet.
Thank you.
So there were other questions.
Grading. Okay, what I see now, when I see the site, that you had enough debris to grade, especially the north-ended site, so that's the permanent height of the campus, or is it going to be higher?
Yeah, it's gonna be high. I mean, it's closer with 2 feet of snow on it, but it's lower. It's from where we are looking in the phase 1 area. It's probably 3 to 4 feet below what the finished grade is going to be. At least down the center third of the island, and then it draws down to the roads. The new roads will be close to the existing road elevations,
So you're
but the
gonna,
center is going to come up about 3 to 4 feet.
so you're still gonna have to bring in fill to boost it up?
Yes. We're going to be using some of the spoils from the excavation and foundation of some of the buildings to bring it up, but there's going to have to be some fill brought in, especially clean fill for the landscaping and the final layers.
I just wanted to ask a quick question. A long time ago, they had said that there might have been some sort of toxic items or substances in the, in the ground. Was there anything about that? Did you find anything, or everything was okay?
Haven't found anything yet.
We knew of one underground oil storage tank that turned out that there were no leaks.
Mm-hmm.
We did preliminary and post testing on it, but other than that, two environmental companies have been on site. We haven't found anything.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah, we have an environmental firm, Rue. They were here at the last meeting, and we have since entered into a contract with them for oversight of all excavation, so they'll be out there when the excavation for all the buildings are happening, reviewing the soils that are found and making judgments about what's there, but no, so far we've found it.
We can't move the soil without them looking at it.
Right. I mean, again, it's important to remember, this was never an industrial site. This was always an institutional site. So based on the historical surveys that were done, as well as the early sampling, there was never any anticipation that there were significant environmental issues here, other than the potential for leaked tanks, either tanks that weren't reported and leaked, or tanks that were reported and leaked, but we got lucky.
Okay.
so far.
The residential building is going to be very tall. You're building up the site to start out at, you said, how much higher than it is now?
It's not, it's
That
60
doesn't have
feet.
anything to do with the heights of the buildings.
Right.
I mean, the buildings are gonna go, they're not real deep buildings, but, some of them have a basement, but they have to dig down to existing good fill or rock to put their foundations in. So when we come up, we're coming up to their first floor level, which isn't really elevated that high.
Okay, so you're building on
We're just contouring.
bedrock or whatever it is you're building. You're not building on the fill.
Right.
Is that
The
correct?
structured foundations don't sit on the fill, they sit on bedrock.
So when the building goes up, I don't know how tall it was when I don't remember how tall it was.
26 stories.
We're doing more to contour the island than to fill it in. It's not like it's a hole or a valley. We're just bringing it up for contouring and plantings and things like that.
Thank you. I have two questions about the height. So you said it's another 3 feet or so. My recollection was that you were going to be building, I saw 31 feet, and this is sort of a post-Sandy analysis of coming up to a higher level to deal with potential flooding issues. What was the resolution of that? And I have a second follow-up question on the on flooding.
The elevations we're talking about, 2 to 3 feet, that's not the datum elevations.
Right.
The first floor of, for instance, the utility plant, the top of the first floor slab is at 20 feet.
Okay.
Which is almost as high as the sidewalk. The center of the road is 20, low 20, something around there. So that's the datum. So when I say 3 feet, that's just a relative.
I understood that, but I recall that instead of the original amount, that you were going to add on top, it was 31 feet, which I thought was sort of high. I mean, reasonable in terms of flood planning, but in terms of flood planning, then let me ask the question in a different way. In terms of what is your flood planning level on that? What zone, in terms of height, then is the base of the utility plant? And I ask that because that's probably one of the more important plants out of the buildings out of the project, and also elsewhere on Roosevelt Island here, we've had significant flooding problems with respect to utilities, and as you're probably aware, Con Ed has been refurbishing, their infrastructure to make, vaults completely submergible. I'm not sure, I don't know if you're incorporating that strategy in your design. I was wondering if you have any comments on it.
Tishman's not the designers, we're just building it, but I know that basically the center third comes somewhere on the datum line around 16 to 19 feet. Okay,
That puts you in zone 2? Then?
No, but I also know just from sitting in on the permitting meetings that we're not in a flood zone. So anything out there wasn't subject to scrutiny for a floodplain area. And maybe somebody else can speak.
I'll follow up with you offline because I'd like to get a definitive answer, and I can, rather than going back and forth, I'll follow up with you.
Yeah, do you want to?
Yeah, when you mentioned 31 feet, that could have been
The elevation?
The old elevation numbering system we were using, the Belmont Island elevations at one time, and then the Department of Buildings asked us to change to NAV, North American something V, vertical datum 88. So the NAVD 88 is very different. I mean, it's the same elevation, but they call it a different number. So I just happen to have this crib sheet because we keep changing back and forth, but as Tim pointed out, the cup elevation under NAVD 88 is 20. The 100-year, the new 100-year floodplain from FEMA is 12, and the 500-year floodplain is 14. So cup is well above the 500-year floodplain. Now, cup is the highest elevation. The other buildings are between 15 and 19, but all of them are above the 500-year floodplain.
And those datums relative to mean sea level then? Are they above or below mean sea level?
The data was all, regardless of the readings, the US geodetic, it doesn't matter. They're all based off of sea level.
Right.
Yeah, it's just a different measuring term, that's all.
I'll follow up offline, I don't wanna take up too much time.
And just to follow up on that too, the transformers are not below ground, they're at grade.
Yeah.
So they're on the ground floor of the company.
But they're elevated, they are the highest building on the
Yes.
site, highest ground floor.
Thank you.
Other questions about the streets, the utilities, or the central utility building? I think John alluded to it. We've just started conversations with RIAC about road closures, because, as we said from the beginning, in order to widen the streets and to replace all of the utilities underneath of them, unfortunately, we do have to close the roads. And so we understand there needs to be access to the southern end of the island for vehicles in order to serve the facilities down there. So it's going to be a complicated process of figuring out when the right time is to close which piece of the road, and we're going to be working with RIAC on that over the next 2 months or so. First,